some of the challenges that you faced, some of the maybe perhaps failures you might have had along the way, and whether it's with this company or with others, because we know that many of you have been serial entrepreneurs. Welcome everyone, thank you so much for coming. I'm certainly excited to be here. I'm new to Mars, but I'm very, very passionate about health, about disruptive technologies, about disrupting health and improving outcomes for patients. And also very passionate about entrepreneurs, helping to find the next breakthrough company, helping to accelerate and scale companies, which I've been fortunate enough to have done. Very excited tonight to have the three panelists here, and really I'll just be asking questions, and I hope that you'll listen intently. We're very, very fortunate to have the caliber of entrepreneur here tonight, so there's a lot that we can all learn from them, and I hope that you'll think about questions as we're going through our session, because we equally want to open it to the floor so that others can ask the challenging questions that you really need to know. We hope that we'll leave you with a nugget or two of information that will be helpful to you as you're going through your own journey. And if there's some way that we can shed light on some of the, not only some of the successes we've had, but maybe some of the failures we've had to help to prevent some of those for you as well, we'd like to do that. We'll get started, if we could. We'll start at this because we introduced you last, so we'll have you start first. Just maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe your journey, a little bit of how you got to be where you are, and then please tell us about your company.
Sure. All right, well, thank you for having me here tonight. It's definitely a pleasure to be with such an audience, such a talented audience. So I'm Sarah Sharpe. My background is very much in healthcare. So I am with a technology company, I suppose, but I bring the healthcare expertise. So really my background is psychology, epidemiology, and I'm doing a PhD in health services research. And I spent 10 years working in rehabilitation and complex continuing care in quality and risk management and performance measurement. So you can see that my background is very research, quality improvement, performance measurement related. In that, I did get to see hospital incidents. I did get to see hospital performance and see the problems that providers were facing and the patients were facing, especially as they were discharged home. And so our company came out of a conversation with a few other of the co-founders when we were really trying to tackle that struggle of hospitals trying to reduce length of stay, shift care into the community, but then all within much tighter budgets. And so we had a conversation around how do we leverage existing technologies, so iPhones, iPads, even desktops, mobile phones. How do we leverage that existing technology to actually connect patients and providers when patients are in the community? And so hence QOC Health was formed. So we do provide mobile and web-based solutions for patients and providers. So we have, it's an entire platform made up of multiple building blocks, so to speak. And so those building blocks include things like mobile monitoring, patient education tools, peer support tools, EMR integration tools. And so our clients can then customize, they choose which building blocks they want, and then they customize them according to their needs through a co-design process where we always involve patients, providers. Everything is custom in that way. But by leveraging existing building blocks in the platform, we can actually build things very quickly, sustainably, complying to privacy security, and it's very scalable and spreadable as well. And so that's, I guess, the brief explanation of what we do at QOC Health.
Great, thank you.
I'm Jeff Kent. I'm the Senior Vice President of Operations at Highland Therapeutics. We're a tenant here at Mars. I apologize, David Licorice, our founder, was supposed to make it, but he couldn't with the other commitments. We can talk about that later on. But I've been with David since the very beginning. Of course, at the very beginning of any startup, you're not getting paid. So there's a long period, and I'm not even sure we'd qualify as a startup anymore after 8 years. It seems like that's a long time to consider yourself a startup. But it's a long path in drug development, and we were founded in 2008. If there's one thing we could say is we never thought it would take this long to get where we are, and we're doing relatively well. But we're in phase 3 pivotal trials for our lead product, and it's a reformulation of methylphenidate to treat ADHD. Our technology primarily is for nighttime dosing. So you take a drug at night, have no release overnight, and then have the release kick in the morning. And it works for many different active pharmaceutical ingredients, but you have to be focused when you're starting out. You can't go after all of them, so we went for the biggest market, which is primarily in the States. So again, we're started in Canada, but a lot of our focus is on the US market. And yeah, my personal background is I have a legal background. I've got a law degree, and David was a Wall Street analyst. So a lot of the expert help in formulation and our advisors were the clinicians and doctors, and we've sort of brought that in. So that's one of the challenges that we faced is, people are always going to be saying, like, interesting idea. I don't think you're the right person to be doing this, though, because you're not a doctor, you're not a scientist. So yeah, it's been an interesting path. We just raised 50 million in the last round earlier this summer, 25 million equity, 25 million line of credit from a key investor that's a really good fit with us. So they've been, that's a big part of our story, is having the right advisors and investors that have helped us get where we are. So yeah, it's an exciting journey, and looking forward to talking further.
Thank you. Thank you, Paul.
Well, again, thank you for having me here today. It's great to see such a great turnout for topics like this. It's really encouraging to see that the appetite for entrepreneurship in the medical sector here, and I think that's something that we're all passionate about. My background is relatively eclectic, mainly in the technology space. So I started my career in imaging outside of the medical space, and I spent some time after that helping startups in the technology space get financed, get set up and going about a decade ago. Over the last 12 years, I've been primarily focused in medical devices, and with both large and small companies. I started in the medical device space with Johnson & Johnson, and then had the good fortune to get involved with an early stage startup that was just starting to ramp up, and has ultimately spawned a number of other startups today, which was Sentinel Medical in the breast MRI space. So you're seeing companies like Synaptive Medical, who are reside in Mars as well, us, Tornado Medical, a number of others that have spawned out of that. So that's really gratifying. And we had some success growing that over a couple of years, and selling that to a large multinational. And that's again what spawned some of the successes and of these other companies getting set up. So the company that we're involved with today, Perimeter Medical, is actually a spin-out of one of the spin-outs or companies that was closely associated with Sentinel. After the exit, there was a group that was able to incubate a number of technologies over a couple of years, and they found one of the technologies was very interesting and had some application and assessment of in-surgical tissues or tumors. And the problem that we're trying to address today is a very significant problem for breast cancer patients. About 25% of women who undergo a breast lumpectomy surgery have to come back for a second surgery, which is obviously very, very, very traumatic for the patients and their families, but extremely costly for the healthcare system. And what we're trying to do is adapt a proven imaging technology that's used in other applications into this very new application, and use it in a very new and unique way. And so we've been ramping up this. We're still pre-FDA clearance or pre-regulatory clearance, but we're getting hitting a lot of our milestones and on track to submit for an FDA submission early in 2016. So we're making a lot of milestones. As Dianne mentioned, we were successful in raising a relatively substantial round, $5 million, and then we're able to tap into some of the good government programs that are available to us here in Ontario with FedDev and so on for another $1.5 million. So we're on our way, and look forward to talking a bit about some of the ups and downs of that journey.
Congratulations to all of you. You're all tackling really, really important issues for all of us, and really a good cross-section of healthcare. And you've spoken about some of the successes. Perhaps you'd like to talk about either some of the challenges that you faced, some of the maybe perhaps failures you might have had along the way, and whether it's with this company or with others, because we know that many of you have been serial entrepreneurs, and so most of us have been, and we learn from some of those failures and apply those learnings to the next journey. So I don't know who wants to talk about their failures, or like to say, no, there haven't been any, or just challenges that you might have had, or things that other people who are either considering being entrepreneurs or are beginning the entrepreneurial journey, might want to hear, so that they know that that's normal. Some of these things happen.
I'm happy to start.
Okay, great, thanks.
I don't necessarily have, well, I probably have many failures in that have taught the way we go, but I mean, every week as an entrepreneur has both highs and lows, and it's very, very, you find that the challenge that faces you this week and seems like insurmountable is next week forgotten because you've got other things that have either come up and have taken your attention. The big thing from my perspective is you can't stay still. You have to keep making decisions, and we're never in a startup, I don't think ever in business, we're in a position where we are privy to complete information. So we're having to make our decisions very quickly on very incomplete information. And if you don't do that, where I think a lot of companies run into challenges and don't get over these hurdles is that they're afraid to make those decisions. I talk to my team all the time and say I'd rather make 10 decisions and get 6 right, and I reserve the right with new information to make pivots on where we're going in that, than make 2 decisions and get them both right. Because if we're making 2 decisions and getting them both right, we haven't moved the ball forward at all. And so again, you surround yourself with really talented people, and both on the team and on the advisory board, you try and triangulate and, as I said, make the best decisions possible, and you react to things that come up. I guess not react's a bad word because I think you always take that information and assess it, but I think it's very important that you just have to keep the ball going. You know your business better, or you should know your business better than anyone in the community, your investors, and that they're looking to you to make those decisions and push the ball down the field. So,
Great. Thank you. Anybody else?
That's a great answer. I couldn't agree more that every day you're basically being forced to make decisions with incomplete information, and you have to get comfortable with that. And it doesn't seem to stop. That was true 8 years ago for us, and it's still true like this week, today, with some of the decisions we're having to make. You're saying, well, I don't know if this is going to actually help the company or not, but it's going to cost me $500,000, and what am I going to do? So yeah, that's absolutely, I think, the case. In terms of failures, I would say the last sort of startup that I was with was a technology startup prior to this, being with Highland. And I think it was a great product we had. It suffered from a lack of focus, though. We never really were able to target exactly our value proposition and our ideal customer. And it was one of the most painful failures you could have because it didn't fail quickly. It was a long, drawn out, we had revenue, we were making some money, but it never clicked. And it's very tough to give up on that when it's your baby and you're really invested in it. It's even worse when you've hired a team that you really believe in and you've just got a product that is just not taking off. It's instead of ramping up, it's just puttering along, and it's on life support. And one of the most difficult decisions you have to make in that situation is, do you pivot, do you pull the plug, and how do you react to that? And it's tough, and you need a good team. You need, as an entrepreneur, you're often so alone in terms of your perspective of the company, and the responsibility you have is so unique that you really need to work on building a good support network. Maybe it's your significant other, maybe it's other entrepreneurs. I would suggest that meetings like this, if there's entrepreneurs in the audience, that you may be in different industries, but on some level, you guys get each other and your problems. And it's good to be able to talk them out, because there's times, if you're an entrepreneur, you will be pushed to a limit where you're like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I just don't know if this is, I've got the internal strength and resources to keep going. And pushing through that is what makes you successful in the end. So.
Those are great comments. Thank you.
So I can't disagree with those comments. And I'll tackle this from a slightly different perspective, and just really focusing in on healthcare in particular as a difficult place to start a business. And one of the main reasons we discovered for that, and I knew this because I'd worked in healthcare for so long, I sat on the other side of the fence. I was the person in the room that the companies came into and tried to sell their services. So I know those conversations. And the problem is that persistent pilot, in that healthcare notoriously very willing to do those smaller scale innovations and tests, 30 patients, small grants, small bit of foundation money. But then how do you get that into something that's more sustainable? How do you tap into operational dollars? And so really, in the beginning, that was a struggle. We were able to, those smaller ones, and the smaller ones are key. They're very important for innovation. So that's where you can have those rapid cycle tests. You can try out those new ideas with patients and providers. But as a business, you do need to get to that sustainability level. And so the way that we've tackled it is really through trying to understand from our clients' perspectives, and that's mainly hospitals, other healthcare providers, LHINs, et cetera. What is it that they need to know in order to transfer and really start thinking about this in an operational sense? And so what we do is we actually measure everything that we do. It could be a small test with 10 patients. It could be an implementation with 1,000 patients. We always measure using basically the IHI Triple AIM framework. And so we look at the clinical outcomes. We look at the patient-provider experience, including workflow. Does it actually fit in their processes? How does it fit? And most importantly, to most funders, cost. So, and that conversation is very important, and it's one that I'm always learning about, because sometimes you can't actually save dollars in healthcare, especially if you're looking at global budgets and other ways of funding. But what you can do is look at what can you do with the current dollars in a better way? Can you see more patients more effectively, reduce wait lists, and have better outcomes with the same amount of money? That's where innovation starts to turn into a more sustainable product, and you can actually get past that pilot phase.
Mm-hmm.